Let's turn our attention to that horrific fire in Switzerland in a nightclub, the Constellation, that has left 40 dead and many dozens more injured, many with life-changing burns, many of whom actually had to be flown out of the country to specialist burn units because of the lack of facilities, even in a country like Switzerland. And the big concern about, well, fire safety precautions, not just in Switzerland in that particular town, but actually around the world and indeed in the UK. Let's talk to fire safety expert Arnold Tarling. Thank you so much for joining us, Arnold.
Well, it's a pleasure, Julia.
I wish we was working under happier circumstances, but I have to say it's absolutely shocking, the images we've got from that nightclub where young people there, people with their bottles of champagne, and they've got these sparklers, and you can just see the point of which the flame hit the ceiling, and just all hell broke out. That fire swept through that nightclub within, I mean, it would appear seconds. So many people lost their lives, so many people's lives ruined as a result. And there have been so many issues raised about fire safety, the lack of proper regulation there, the flammable insulation and the ceiling, and fire doors being padlocked shut, so unable to be opened. What did you make of what you've seen?
Absolutely horrendous, totally avoidable, should never ever have happened. It all goes back to a refurbishment when they kitted out that bar and put what appears to be polyurethane sound deadening material across the ceiling. Had they gone for a more expensive melamine foam, it wouldn't have combusted and you wouldn't have had the disaster. So probably money saving. Maybe the product sold was not what they thought they were buying, that it was a fake material. We get loads of fake materials coming in from places like China. Yeah.
And how would you know? I mean, we know that there are criminal prosecutions being planned against the bar managers, but also question marks about the bar owner, who apparently has got some very serious convictions himself. So we've got some big question marks about, their concern for legalities in the first place. But it would be perfectly possible for someone to be completely law-abiding and think they're abiding by all the regulations, and they've been sold a product which is just totally unsafe.
Indeed, people who were having Grenfell Tower clad, the council believed they were having a safe material. Yeah. The British Board of Agreement certificate said it was safe. In fact, the insulation said it was safe for use on high-rise. Yeah. But we now know that the Building Research Establishment undertook a fake test to get it through using materials you cannot use on a building. Yeah. Having already failed one test, they then retested it in a way that it couldn't be used and then produced a certificate that didn't show how they faked it. And
this is the thing, you sort of, I know we've learnt that, from the Grenfell inquiry, just the sort of the frustration at how simple it would have been to have got these things right. But I saw one report from a fire expert over the weekend saying, that the stuff on the ceiling, you may as well have just poured petrol all over the ceiling. It was that flammable.
Yes, it's just solid fuel, like petrol. These plastics that they are pushing in, are highly dangerous. Yeah. We saw it in that country. We saw it in Rhode Island. We've seen disasters in Dublin. Yeah. These cases are getting repeated around the world. And when it comes down to the building regulations, when you're actually doing the building itself and all this construction, you get a certain degree of inspection, nowhere near thorough enough. Yeah. But then when people do a refurbishment, building regulations and the building control, not consulted at all.
No, that's very interesting. And again, Switzerland, this is a functioning, wealthy country. This isn't, it's not like Bangladesh, where buildings collapse because, everyone's paid off the building inspectors. But, the fire safety precautions, quite apart from, the precaution of not having flammable material on the ceiling, we're told that fire extinguishers at the bar were kept in a room that was usually locked. The emergency exit was also often locked. Again, these things completely illegal. And now we're looking at the bar owners being charged investigated arrested on suspicion of negligence causing homicide, bodily harm and arson. Very, very serious charges. I suppose the concern for a lot of people is, look, they go away on holiday. Look, I've sent my daughter off to, an underground bar, on a ski holiday before, and I've been to, and thinking, wow, I'd love to know what the material there is, because I'd love to know how we would get out of that club in France. But, what about the clubs and the bars here in the UK? Is there any chance that we've also got that sort of insulation in places here? Because one of the things we discovered after Grenfell was, as much as it was being pushed at the time, it's like, oh, it's because there were a load of council tenants and it was a horrible Tory council and these were all poor people. No, this was across the board. Private hospitals, private schools, very fancy, apartment blocks owned entirely by private residents also had this insulation. So how likely is it that this could happen here?
Well, it can happen very, very quickly. It comes to Christmas and people put up loads of decorations. They stick a Christmas tree in, maybe a natural one. Let's go for a natural Christmas tree. Yeah. Well, when they've dried out and everything, they go up incredibly quickly. And you put that near somewhere, maybe the exit door. How do you get out? Yeah. Now, one of the things I always do when I go into establishments is I check my fire exit.
Really?
Can I get out? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of times where I've gone in and said, I want this removed. I don't want chairs in the exit. I want that table moved from over there. They argue with me. There was one in Beckenham. They'd already had a fire there once. And I noted that the people were coming out the kitchen, chucking stuff down opening the fire door and chucking the rubbish in. At the end of the meal, I got up, I opened the door. You could not see the staircase. It was full top to bottom with waste food and rubbish. And I insisted that they cleaned it out there and then and never went back.
Yeah, funnily enough, we need, this is the thing, I think the thing in this country in particular, you think that there's so many sort of health and safety things where people getting involved with people's lives far too much and it's all too nitpicked. If you've ever done any building work at home, you go, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. You think, oh, for goodness sake. But when it comes to the stuff that is really important, that saves lives, that work isn't done.
Work isn't done or it's neglected. They were always told lessons will be learned. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, they're not learnt. No. They're forgotten. They're not taught. They're ignored. We'll get away with it. And it all goes back to exactly as it was before. Yeah. And the number of places I actually go to which don't comply in one way or another. Maybe the fire extinguishers are there, but you have to walk into the property to get them because they're not near the exits where you require them. Yeah. They're not hanging at the right height. They're not the right type, even. So you go into certain food bars and they've got the dry powder extinguishers. You never use them indoors. Right. They're the wrong ones. They don't work. And there's a wet chem chemical which you use on fat fryers, like you have the chip fryers in restaurants and places, and they don't have it. And that's the only one that will work. Yeah, again, this is quite scary. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like you, I'm walking in a place and go, I'm walking straight out again, it's not safe. But again, these teenagers, these 20-year-olds, they wouldn't have known this, would they? Arnold, Tarling, really appreciate talking to you, although you frighten the living daylights out of me. But maybe we need to have that fire safety expert, Arnold. Thank you very much indeed. Sam Armstrong, this story is just absolutely horrific. And again, people who, your kids go off to a bar or club. I mean, some of these kids were 15 years old. And you want to hope they're coming home again. We know that a former pupil at 2 British schools, Charlotte Niddam, is one of those who's died. Numerous others injured. I mean, they've really struggled to identify people because people are so horrifically burned, even people who are alive. Yeah. This is absolutely horrific. I have no doubt at all this could happen again. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. Yeah, and obviously no one is to blame other than those responsible for installing the system and all the rest of it. However, one thing that did jump out at me was the number of these kids that so very tragically they saw the ceiling go alight and their first instinct to get their phones and to film it. Apparently they would have thought it was part of the show. But I mean, I would say this: if you're a parent and you've got a kid of that age, you've got to tell them if something's going wrong. Get out of there. Do not get your phone out. By all accounts, when I've read that material is so flammable that actually the chances of the fact that anyone got out at all is incredible. Yeah. That's the thing.